Hey guys, so today I wanted to do another photo editing tutorial on how to get kind of more cooler and blue tones in your image. So this is the photo we are going to be editing today, and this is the final result. I'm just going to go through step by step on how I edited this photo to get these lovely blue tones but still maintain some warmth in the skin. So we are just going to go ahead and open this raw image. And because I've already edited it, my camera raw settings are already set, so I'm just going to reset these as well as my white balance here and start from scratch. So this is the raw image straight out of camera. So as you can tell, it's very warm, and we just want to go for that more contrasted and cool blue tone in our image. So we're going to change up the temperature here, so I'm going to bring it down to about there, and that's just already added some blue into our image. And then for the tint, I'm going to go to -7, and that's going to add a little bit of a magenta tint to the image. And just like I say in most of my tutorials, this is what works for my image, so you may have to play around and experiment with what I'm doing for your image to get it to look somewhat the same. This is just kind of like a basis or a small guideline on how to achieve this kind of look. So now we're just going to go into here and play with these sliders. I'm going to bring my exposure up a bit, as well as my contrast, because we want a really contrasted image. So around there is fine. I'm going to bring my highlights up, just because I like it when my highlights are pretty bright. And it also helps to add contrast into the image. And we're going to bring the shadows down a little bit here, like that. So that just deepens up the hair a bit, and the lips and the eyes a little bit. The whites I'm going to bring down just to not make them super bright, and then blacks we're going to bring down a little bit again. And for some reason this part doesn't reset for me, but I always like to bring my clarity up a little, and then I just brought my vibrance down and my saturation up just a little bit. So now we're just going to open our image in Photoshop and get to work with using adjustment layers and things like that to help make the image more contrasted and blue toned. So like always, I like to duplicate my background layer and then start working from there. So the first thing we're going to do is add a curve. And we are just aiming to add more contrast at this point. So I kind of like to make an S curve because that's what it looks like. So I bring my middle point up. So the middle point is like the overall exposure of the image. So if you bring it down, it kind of darkens the overall exposure, and then if you bring it up, it kind of brightens it. And then in the lower left corner, these are like your shadows, and in the upper right corner, these are like your highlights. Just to keep that in mind if you're ever confused about curves and how they work. So I just like to bring my middle point up a little bit, because I always like to add a little bit more brightness and exposure into my image. And then I like to bring my shadows down a little, and depending on the image, I either like to bring my highlights up or down. So I think I'm going to actually do something like that. So the more points you add, the more fine tuning you can do to your image with the exposure and the contrast and stuff like that. So let's just see the before and after really quick. That's before, and then that's after adding our curve. So now we're going to add another curve, but we are just going to play around in our red and blue channels. So in the red channel, obviously if you bring the reds up, you get more red, and if you bring them down, you get more cyan or a little bit of like a bluey green tint. So I want to play around with that. and just move my sliders, or move my points, I mean, in just small increments here. Already we're starting to get those blue tones in the highlights, which is what I like. And then we're going to bring the shadows down too, like that. Okay, that looks pretty good so far. And then we're going to move to the blue channel. And like the red channel, if you bring it up more, you get more blue. And if you bring it down more, you get more yellow. So we're going to, let's start with the shadows a little. Make those a little bit more blue. And our highlights. And again, this is all just kind of experimenting and playing around with making small increments to where you place your points. So I think that looks pretty good so far. So that's our before, and that's our after with just playing around with the blue and the red channels. So I like how this is looking. You can obviously play around a bit more to get the look that you want, but I actually like how this looks. So now there are just a few things that I want to fix up in the image. So for example, this set of leaves here and then this branch over here are kind of in focus as well, and I just want to go in and blur that a little bit to make my focus more on my subject. So I'm going to do Option Command Shift E, and that just merges all the layers below onto its own layer, if that makes sense. I will leave links in the description below on keyboard shortcuts for Photoshop, just in case you want to familiarize yourself with keyboard shortcuts and things like that, because I live off keyboard shortcuts in Photoshop, so yes. And then we're going to go up to Filter up here in your toolbar, or I think that's what it's called, and then you're going to go to Blur, Gaussian Blur. I've added my own keyboard shortcut to it. I will also leave a link down below on how to make your own keyboard shortcuts. If you find yourself using a specific filter often, it's really nice to just have a keyboard shortcut to go to that filter so you don't have to keep moving around to filter, blur, and whatever. So we're going to do Gaussian Blur, and we're just going to increase the amount until it's the blurred effect that we want. I don't want it like super blurred, but just enough to make it not so distracting. So something like that. Then I'm going to add a layer mask, and I have a keyboard shortcut for adding layer masks, but if you don't, it's just this button right here. And then we are going to do Command I to invert it, and then with your brush tool selected and with a white color at 100% opacity, we're just going to pass over the spots we want to be a bit more blurred, like so. And already it's kind of taken the attention away from those branches and those leaves and put the attention back onto our subject. So that's the before and the after. I think that looks pretty good. Feel free to play around with the opacity and go over other parts like this branch a little bit here and up here a little bit. So there we go. It just takes the attention off of those objects in the image and puts it back onto our subject. I think I'm gonna go back and do another curve and play with the blue channels again, because I want it, looking at it now, I kind of want it a little bit more blue, like this. Yeah, that looks a lot better. That's the blue that I kind of wanted to go for. And actually, I'm going to go back into just the RGB channels and add more contrast as well. Like that. if you want to kind of add a bit more warmth back into the skin tone, this is what I've been trying to experiment with recently, and that's gradient maps. So I'm just gonna try this. I don't know if it's gonna work. I did it in the photo I showed you at the beginning, but because I'm re-editing this and my adjustments aren't the same as the photo I showed you in the beginning, I don't know how well this is gonna work this time around. So I'm just gonna add a gradient map and clicking on the gradient up there and changing this color to a light orange kind of color. Like that. And basically gradient maps are kind of like split toning in a way. So over on this side of the gradient, it's kind of affecting the shadows, and then this side of the gradient is affecting the highlights, as you can see. So all of my highlights in my image are kind of white, and all of my shadows are this orange color that I've selected. So I'm going to press OK, and then we are going to change the layer type to an overlay, and then bring our opacity way down to like 4 or 5, like that. And it just adds a little bit of that warmth back into the image to help with the skin tones a little bit. And it also kind of makes the leaves a little bit more warm toned as well. And I feel like it just helps balance the image out from all the blue tones. Next, I want to just darken the background a little bit to make the subject stand out more, so I'm going to add a new layer and make it a soft light layer, and I like to zoom out a little bit for this part. Make my brush quite big with a black color, and make my opacity around 10 or 20%. I'm going to start at 10, and I just like to go around the perimeter of the image like so, and just paint on it. Sorry, my laptop's like really slow for some reason. I'm gonna increase my opacity a little to 20 and just go around the perimeter of the subject and the image. Just make the subject stand out more. I don't do it for every photo, but I feel like this was a little too distracting and too bright in the background, so doing this just darkens it, makes it more moody, makes it more contrasty like I wanted, and also brings the attention back to my subject. So a few more things to fix. You can obviously go ahead and like clone stamp the skin a little bit if your model has some problem areas, and you can go ahead and like smooth the skin out, do all of that stuff, but I don't want to bore you guys with doing that, and my model has pretty good skin anyway, so I'm not even going to bother doing that. But one thing that is annoying me is this hand here. It is more blue toned than her skin, so we're going to make this more warm, and the way we're going to do that is making a new layer and making it a color layer, and then with our brush tool selected, I'm going to hold down the Option or Alt key and select a skin tone color, or you can just go in and kind of like choose like a warm toned color, and then on a very, very low opacity like 10 or even 5, I will see, I may have to change that. We're just going to paint over the hands to make them more warm and match her face tone a little bit, like that. Before, after, it just kind of makes it look like she has the same skin tone, because she does, and doesn't make it look like she has frostbite on her hands or anything. So the final thing we are going to do is do Command Option Shift E again, and like I said, that just merges all of the layers into its own layer. And then I'm going to my Sharpen tool over here, which can be found under the blur tool if that is what you have selected over here. Just click and hold and then choose Sharpen. I like to leave mine at 50% strength. Don't know why, I just do. And then I just like to click a few times on some of the main areas of the face, so specifically the eyes. This just helps draw the attention to the eyes. So yeah, I just like to sharpen up the eyes a little bit, and then we're pretty much done. I hope this tutorial helped someone out there. Love to see your images. If you tried out this tutorial or took something away from this tutorial, feel free to tag me on Instagram. I would love to see what you guys have done. My @ is just my name. I will have it linked in the description and also somewhere on the screen here. If you guys have any other editing tutorial requests, feel free to leave them in the comments and I will try and get to them as soon as I can. And as always, if you have any questions about my editing or anything about photography in general, also leave those in the comments and I will try and answer them as soon as I can. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss new videos from myself like this, and also don't forget to give this video a like if you liked it. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.